So I wanted to show you this. So I like to show this on my show. These are all the U.S. military bases around the world.
It's not a sex offender registry.
This is not a sex offender registry. This is look at Africa. Look at the Middle East. Look at Asia. Look at Europe. Look at this. It's amazing. And so we've had this is real. And not only there, but it's also in South America. Look at Central America. That is. So
and we still couldn't beat China or Russia in a war currently.
And we
with
still
all that shit. How is that possible?
How is that? But so do you think it's time for us to pull back on the American empire? Do you think the United States needs 1,000 military bases spread across the world like this?
I thought this was a map of all your Airbnbs that you have, Jimmy. All of these bases, all the blue dots there. Should probably be cut by 2/3. And when I was the Undersecretary for Policy performing those duties, we were taking a hard look at we drew down out of Somalia, for example. We moved and we did it in the dark of night over a week, and we didn't talk about it. But those 2,000 troops ish were gone. And we recommended to President Trump to go down around 2,500 in Afghanistan and take a look at it, see what it looked like, make sure NATO was working with us. Biden fundamentally broke NATO when he just kind of left all of that. He left 29 other nations with no way out, and they had to figure it out. And that's part of why there was no diplomacy in the lead up to Putin moving to the border. He saw how incompetent Blinken and Biden and all of them were, and just started rolling to the border and said, yeah, if I'm going to go, I might as well go now. But because Biden had so fundamentally broken NATO, they just kind of let Russia come, because what unifies something better than anything is a common threat, right? So that Russian threat came there. Nobody talked about how Biden broke NATO anymore, and I know because I have a lot of friends in these countries at very senior levels, and they were very, very, very upset. So right now, the progressive agenda has so demoralized the military and this weak leadership that we have, that we can't make recruiting goals by about 25%. And so instead of making sure that we can meet those goals by changing something, they just lower the goal, right? So they're doing an election year. And when you announce recruiting hits or misses is around October, right? Because, it's the fiscal year, so it ends September 30th. And so magically in October, I'll bet you a beer that Biden's going to say, and for the first time in 4 years, we've hit our recruiting goals. And all they will have done is lower the number of people that they're trying to recruit. And our Constitution says raise an army, but maintain a navy. And so it's getting to your point here, this army that we are supposed to scale up or down based upon threat was intentional from the framers of the Constitution, because they saw the land wars going on in Europe, and they didn't want that. They feared a big federal government, and that's also part of the well-regulated militias, and that became the National Guard. And so you have that tension between states and the federal, the big government, and now coupled with big tech that can really, really do some damage. And so but the Navy is about power projection, is about protecting commerce first and foremost back then when this was written. And so maintain a navy. The words mean things, particularly to the framers. And so the Army, if we couldn't fight right now one regional war, much less two with China and Russia. And our national defense strategy lists China, Russia, Iran, North Korea as our four main adversaries. And right now we are not scaling our force to the vital interests of the nation, which is the formula you're supposed to follow. What are our vital interests? How do we defend those? or protect those or ensure those? And then how big a military do we need to do that? And that's right before I left, I submitted a defense planning budget defense planning guidance that matched the budget with the president's vision for DoD. And it's very important that all that hard work happens. And right now we're so busy infusing ideological garbage and with DEI and this anti whatever and BLM stuff. I mean, for God's sake, West Point is changing its mission statement. It looks like I just saw some stuff going. They're removing duty, honor, country from the mission statement. I mean, the fundamental change going on in our bedrock institutions right now that helped make this country so great is really alarming to see some of these things happening. And it's with the invasion across the border, with the media and lockstep with the regime. Instead of holding a microphone up to the media, to the administration and asking questions, they've got a megaphone and they're parroting the administration message, a narrative to the American people. That's fundamentally not the fourth estate's job. And so this collusion between the media, the administration, and big tech is really damaging not only the fabric of our country, but in particular what used to be one of the most trusted institutions in the world, which is the American military. And right now, I would say that's not the case, and many polls say that's not the case. And so these dots on your map, we can't man most of those places. We can't effectively do the job that those places were there for, and even if it's a supply depot. So we're in real trouble.
So, it's been the position of this show that America, not Al Qaeda or ISIS or Iran, is the world's terrorists, and we have been not only with Iraq. Prove that, but what we did to Libya, what we did in Syria, Yemen, we helped commit a genocide there. We're helping commit a genocide right now in Gaza. This war in Ukraine was provoked by the United States, and the 2014 Maidan coup. That's the problem. Is that you just outlined the problem of the news media is not an attack dog or a watchdog of the foreign policy or the government. They're just there as a lapdog. And so when they talked about the Ukraine war, they start the story in the third act. And the third act is when Putin invaded Ukraine. They don't tell you that the CIA got in bed with right-wing Nazis to overthrow their democratically elected government in Ukraine. They don't tell you that the Ukraine government started shelling all the Russian speakers in the eastern part of Ukraine who didn't want to go along with that coup government, and that they had two peace accords called the Minsk Accords, and that who broke those? Not the people of the Donbass and not Russia, but the government of Ukraine did that while they continued to shell. And now we have the former leader of Germany, Merkel, admitted that the only reason they did those Minsk Accords in the first place was to buy time so they could build up the Ukraine military so they could get ready for this war with Russia, which is an economic proxy war, which is why we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And I think the only reason why people like countries like Germany and Europe go along with this militarization and this terrorism by the United States is because of all these bases that I have over my shoulder, and because we are the world's imperialists. And is there any other terrorist group in the world that you can think of that has caused more mayhem, set more fires, killed more people in the last 20 years than the United States and our military?
Well, Jimmy, having served in the military for a career, and served at DoD and served in education and transportation in the county, city, and state levels, I don't know that I would ascribe to the notion that America is a terrorist nation. What I will say is that there's a significant double standard, and I'll just tell you, I would say brigade commander, a colonel in the 101st Airborne Division, commanding the strike brigade, the 2nd Brigade. And we were in Kosovo, putting out a small-scale Kosovo Albanians attacking Macedonians and defending against Serbs. And, it was your standard, peacekeeping chaos that was practically combat just about every day. And 9/11 happened. Bush came over to visit, and June of July of 01, and like 45 days later, 9/11 happens, and I get told, "Hey, you're coming back home, and then you're going to go to Afghanistan with my 4,000 troops." And I said, "Yeah, that's what we do. That's what we're paid to do." And so while I'm training, I get back with my brigade Thanksgiving Day, 01, and we almost immediately go into training. And the division commander, 2-star general, comes down, this early January 02, and says, "You're not going to Afghanistan. You're going to Iraq." And I'm like, "What the hell is in Iraq?" And the malfeasance of Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, Feith, all of them should be, taken to task for what they did. Obviously Rumsfeld's left us, but the one time our country asked for a head on a platter, the one time that in at least modern history, that there's sort of casus belli and just war to go find this guy who plotted this. We don't do that. We have an economy of force, and as Rumsfeld famously said, there aren't enough targets in Afghanistan. Well, you had plenty of targets if your goal was to capture Osama bin Laden and get the hell out of there. But those clowns forever changed the foreign policy, domestic policy of the United States when they squandered the goodwill of the American people by redirecting all that pent-up energy and putting it on Iraq. And you talk about what's the difference between what we did in Iraq and what Putin is doing in Ukraine? I would argue that Putin has a more legitimate border issue with Ukraine than we ever had in Iraq. And I'm not justifying, for all the people that are going to come throw knives at me, I'm not justifying what Putin's doing in Ukraine at all. What I'm saying is we had no justification for going into Iraq. Thousands of men and women killed, wounded, just Americans, tens of thousands all over, from all walks of life. And it was a real abuse of the goodwill of the American people. We were hurt. We were wounded psychologically, physically. Our national capital was attacked. Our financial center, New York City, was attacked. It was a big psychological blow and a physical blow to those that perished. And so why not capture all that goodwill and do everything you can to capture bin Laden and Al Qaeda, and because you're justified in that. But go into Iraq with some make-believe story and then having Colin Powell, God rest his soul, get up in front of the UN and lie. I mean, come on. So that, I'm speaking a little bit to what you're talking about. I think that it's almost not contemporary anymore to think about Operation Iraqi Freedom and that's 23 years ago. That was the name of it. Enduring Freedom was the Afghanistan op, and so there was a plan to put the 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne, and 10th Mountain Division into Afghanistan and Pakistan and just pop it like a zit find all these guys and be done with it, and then get out of there and let them run their country. Instead, because we misdirected into Iraq, we're left with a 20-year hanging Chad, malaise in Afghanistan that ended up with zero progress. Right, zero progress. We tried to impose Western values and training and systems on a fundamentally tribal, not organization, entity in Afghanistan.
So what I would say is that this is exactly what President Eisenhower warned us against on his way out of the office, is beware the undue influence of the military-industrial complex. And what you're describing is how they misdirected what some people would consider a legitimate military operation, going after the people who supposedly attacked us on 9/11 in Afghanistan, instead redirecting that to go into Iraq, which a lot of people have said killed 1 million people. And that what we now know, I mean, I'm through General Wesley Clark, it revealed this, that he was shown classified documents that revealed that they had a plan to go into 7 Muslim countries, and they've gone into every one of them now except for Lebanon. And so,
Iran too.
And right, and so those are the last 2 on their list. And they went and they did Libya, they did Iraq, they did Syria, Yemen. So this was pre-planned. This is the project for a new American century. And the Patriot Act was written up way before 9/11, and so it was almost like it would have been. It's amazing if someone didn't engineer 9/11 so they could do this. But our whole foreign policy has been based on 9/11 for the last 23 years, and that's why we don't have to ever declare war anywhere, because they give the AUMF the authorization for the use of military force. You're supposed to be fighting when the president sends troops. You're supposed to be fighting terrorists, and that's all because of 9/11. And of course, again, I know you're not going to ever admit to this. You're a general, but my point of view is that we're the terrorists, right? We're the one, and when it suits us, we fund the terrorists like ISIS. We created the Mujahideen, which turned into Al Qaeda. We are in bed with ISIS in Syria, trying to overthrow Assad. Why? For a pipeline. That's exactly what that was all about. And we're in there stealing their oil to this day. What is the difference? What we're doing is way worse than what Putin's doing, because Putin actually has, as you mentioned or alluded to, he has a legitimate reason for doing what he's done. And we don't have any legitimate reason for being in Syria. We have no legitimate reason for being in bed with ISIS and the Al Qaeda. We have no legitimate reason for doing what we did in Libya or what we did in Iraq. And a lot of people, 80% of Americans, are against us being in bed with Israel and funding. People. I've heard people say that you have to be wary of Iran. You know why we have to worry about Iran? Because Iran had a democratic government, and the CIA overthrew it so we could steal their oil. We installed a puppet called the Shah of Iran, and then they rejected that Shah, and they put in this right-wing religious government. That's always the blowback of the CIA. So any problem that we think we're confronting with terrorism, we've created. We created the Mujahideen, turned into Al Qaeda. We created this. The people that are running the Iran right now.
Wahhabism.
It's all been created by the United States. And so that's the thing that people. So there's nobody else to fear in the world except the United States, and people around the world know that. It's only the people in America that don't know that, because we're propagandized by the military-industrial complex, which owns our media. Right? There's only 6 media companies, and they are, and all the journalists aren't worth a shit. They don't come from blue-collar backgrounds anymore. They come from elite universities, and they're class loyal, and know they have to work for a billionaire, which is why we find ourselves in endless wars, spending $1 trillion a year on military that we don't need, while we're starving and hollowing out our own country, people living under every bridge, senior citizens taking half their medicine, people can't afford houses, half of America can't afford a $1,000 emergency, 50% of all wage earners earn less than $30,000 a year. And that's because the corporate capture by the military-industrial complex and big oil of our government. When you see a session of Congress, only a fool thinks that they're in there doing the bidding of workers, regular Americans, senior citizens, and students. They're in there doing the bidding of the international billionaire class, which owns the Democrats and Republicans, which is why we have 1,000 military bases around the world. And read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and you'll find out nothing's changed since then. Hey, come see us do a live stand-up show. We're going to be in Stockholm, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, London, Oslo, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Cortland, New York, Oakmont, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Edmonton, Alberta, Vancouver, British Columbia, and Denver, Colorado. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets.